Okay.
It triggered them, which is exactly what why Cankry became a thing too.
Alright.
That was basically his return to saying, "You guys are too weak."
Alright. You probably have no idea where I am in this game right now, but...
I never played that.
This is DanDaMan92, in case anyone gives a fuck.
Hi.
Let's see, where am I in the game? Or I'm getting my ass
Not to be confused with any other DanDaMan.
Yeah,
At the 90-second variant.
Let's see, when it comes to where I am in this game, you don't know, like, the plot structure of Link to the Past, but I'm, like... Have you played any Zelda games?
Yes.
You played Ocarina of Time?
I actually picked up Zelda when Wind Waker happened.
Okay. So you know, like, the basic plot structures of most Zelda games, where you collect 3 jewels, and then collect a couple more things after a plot twist, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I've collected 2 of the jewels required for the Master Sword so far, and now I'm heading to get the 3rd. Like, the story for this game is that, like, some guy took over the kingdom, and, wait, I have to get something. He's trying to unlock the secret of these parallel towers that were created in some war long ago. And there's like a parallel world that's connected via the tower.
Is this concurrent with the original plot of Link to the Past?
It's very similar. Like, in Link to the Past, you collected 3 jewels, got the Master Sword, went to a dark world. In this game, you collect 3 jewels, you know, get your sword upgraded. Like, there's a bit of a plot twist, and then head to the parallel world, per se. And there's 7 dungeons there. Like, the plot structure is very similar. You get up in the morning, your uncle's like, stay in bed. You know, I'm going to save Zelda. You head after him, he gets knocked out, you save Zelda yourself. The church guy tells you to go see the Elder. You go see the Elder, he tells you about what's going on. Dragor is like this game's Aghanim. Aghanim like took over the kingdom in Link to the Past, just like this game's Dragor. Like, it's very similar, and I can understand why, because I doubt he knew how to really change the game's events. So he just created like to make up for it not being much different when it comes to story, he made it incredibly difficult.
Well, that's always a valid option.
Yeah. Like, for one of the main things that always happens in a Zelda game, you get a heart container when you beat a boss, right?
Right.
You don't get a heart container when you beat a boss in this game.
Oh, so it's like the traditional 3-heart challenge.
Yeah. Well, you can find heart pieces in the overworld, but they're really well hidden.
Probably more like how Twilight Princess did that.
Yeah, they did 6 hearts per container, though. Thankfully, this game didn't make us do that.
Wait, no, they did 5 in Twilight Princess.
Oh, they did 5, that's what it was. I just remember not liking it for some reason.
Yeah, me neither. Because it was kind of a meaningless change.
Yeah.
Sure, the heart pieces were hidden better, I like that, but I didn't see the point of knocking it up to 5 in the first place.
Actually, I haven't beaten Twilight Princess. I want to do that eventually, but I don't have my Wii.
I really like that game, but not for the challenge. That game is way too easy.
Oh yeah,
I was able to beat all the bosses without losing a heart.
I don't think any of the Zelda games are really big challenges. Skyward Sword was actually kind of difficult, but
no, Skyward Sword was pain.
That went a lot into the controls, which is actually pretty good, because the controls weren't bad, they were just, like, precise. I don't know, what do you think of the controls?
It was the Wii Motion Plus that caused the most grievances for everyone. I didn't have so much of a problem with them, probably because I'm used to my Wii remote and responding well. Hey. Mina. Shh. Sorry, I have a dog that loves to guard every place and attack squirrels on sight. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah. Skyward Sword was a good challenge, and like the only reason why I had an issue with the Wii Motion Plus was mostly because of my setup at home. It's like my TV only allows me like 3 feet of space from it.
Yeah. I remember like.
So it's a Catholic rave or whatever.
I remember the first boss fight. I actually really liked it because for once I felt like I was putting skill into like a boss fight. Like the way you had to like dodge his attacks, I guess.
it felt more like I was actually dueling, and that's the exact same feeling I get whenever I played Infinity Blade for the first time. That iOS game that's pretty much my only reason for getting an iPhone.
Oh yeah, I remember my dad was playing that game. I haven't played it though.
They made 2 sequels and a book.
Dang.
Yeah, like Iron Games actually did really good on something really tiny for once.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they should stick to, in my opinion. But whatever. I don't really like Iron Games.
I never even heard of them actually. What do they even make?
What did they make? I know they helped out on Mass Effect 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, which was actually kind of good, but then again, that was mostly BioWare's work, and I think Iron Games just did some minor collaboration, if anything. I could be wrong about that. They've mostly made... I can just bring it up. I have the power of the internet here, and I'm not using it.
Animass heart pieces. I actually haven't been able to beat Skyward Sword though, because I gave it to Savannah and she hasn't returned it yet. I know there's nothing in these pots. Why am I checking?
Why not?
The tower? Nope, don't know.
Oh wait, no, not Iron Games. Why did I say Iron Games? I was thinking of Iron Gaming, but the real name of these guys is Epic Games.
Oh, a jewel, try that cave near the tower. You can rest here. This guy doesn't know about the tower, but he knows about the cave near the tower where the jewel is. Fuck logic.
That's Epic Games. Also known as Epic and formerly Epic Mega Games.
They've been renamed?
Made Gears of War.
Oh, they made Gears of War.
Yeah, that's why I don't care for them.
Gears of War? I don't even think I've ever played Gears of War. I've heard of it.
Oh, what else did they make? They made Castle of the Winds, ZZT, Overkill, Jill of the Jungle, Jazz Jackrabbit, Epic Pinball, Firefight, One Must Fall 2097. Oh, that's a good game.
What?
Oh, they made the Unreal series as well. Yeah, they're responsible for the Unreal Engine. Age of Wonders, Gears of War series, Shadow Complex, Kilo Blaster, Infinity Blade series, and yeah. Tencent Holdings has a 40% market share on them. So they're pretty much the majority stock owners of those guys. Stockholders, whatever.
I'm really not looking forward to taking on the parallel tower in this game. I have no idea what it's like.
It's parallel to the original.
In the original game, you actually... Okay, it was really, really messed up. You had to take on the tower 3 times. Basically,
Seriously?
The first time you visited, like, your goal was you had to get the 7 crystals or whatever to enter the tower. Well, you don't really need the crystals. I know there's some way to get past it. But once you make it up to the top of the tower, you have a choice of 2 doors. One of them will let you get the magic mirror, and one of them will let you get a chest that holds the big key, like the big door key. You need both of those.
Yeah.
The magic mirror allows you to return to the light world, and the big key allows you to get through the parallel tower in the light world.
Do you have to choose one or the other, or both?
You have to choose one, then climb the tower again to get the other.
Wow, seriously?
And it's a really unforgiving tower. Like, it's incredibly huge. And then once you finish climbing it... Did I get the book? I did not get the book yet. Or a bottle. It's not a good idea. I feel like I should go get that. I'm already in this dungeon anyway. I don't know. If I start to die... Because this is the dungeon where things get really... mean. This is where it gets mean. If I die too much, I'm just going to say fuck it and save and quit and take the bottle. Oh yeah, the parallel
Now
tower.
you're talking about how much of a pain the dungeon was.
Yeah, it was
tower.
Parallel tower, and then basically once you had both those items, you returned to the light world and you had to climb a different version of the parallel tower again. It shared a lot of the same themes with the the other one, but it was still different because it was in the other world. When you climbed that one, after getting to the very top, you you fought Ganon basically. Like it was just. Is terrible, and obviously it's going to be easier, but I'm still afraid.
By the way, what do you think of the new Zelda game for the 3DS?
Oh, Link Between Worlds? I'm really excited for that, especially with how much I love Link to the Past. But like, my only thing is that I hope they're doing some new overworld areas, because they haven't revealed much. But I really hope they're doing some new overworld areas. Because, like, if I got the exact same overworld from Link to the Past, I don't know how capable I would be.
The one thing I was interested in about the entire announcement was that that's the one game Reggie is actually a fan of.
Yeah.
Not many know this, but Reggie Fils-Aimé is not at all a gamer. He's a businessman.
Yeah.
He's singularly responsible for bringing up so many companies out of mediocrity to fame. And that's exactly why Nintendo made him their CEO of America. Because of his business skills and not because of his gamer history or Nintendo loyalty.
Yeah.
And I think he's behind the Nintendo 2DS as well.
Well, makes sense. I mean, like,
it's a great business strategy,
yeah,
but it's stupid for gamers.
I really don't like the hate for the 2DS because no one thinks about its reason for existing. Because like, you have it's releasing on the same day as Pokemon X and Y. It's the same color as Pokemon X and Y. I mean,
and yet there's the Pokemon X and Y extra large 3DS.
Yeah, but the thing is that so kids can inexpensively play the game
for $40 less.
Yeah, like they get the game in the 2DS and they get, you know, to play Pokemon X and Y, even if their parents like can't get them a 3DS.
Yeah, it still doesn't make sense to me, but that's because for me, $40 is about a day of work, so that's not really too much on $40. Secondly, if it is for kids, then why is it still so big?
Why is it still what?
Why is it still so big? The original 3DS could fit in your pocket, and admittedly it kind of stick out a little bit.
Yeah.
The 3DS XL can't fit in your pocket, but it's still worth having for the comfort.
Yeah.
It's better forming to your hands. But that's not what upsets me about the 2DS. What really upsets me about the 2DS is the fact that there is no 3D feature.
Yeah, like,
and
they finally, like, told us, yes, the 3D was a gimmick, when I thought it was actually kind of cool in some games.
I touted it as an immersion factor, not a gimmick.
As a what? As
an immersion factor, and not a gimmick. Which is really what they should have marketed it as, because if you played Kid Icarus Uprising with that game, with the 3D on, it actually really helps for the immersion and how it feels to fly around.
Yeah.
That was the best part about playing on a 3DS, was getting on Kid Icarus Uprising and flying around and everything.
I think that's
really paying.
What?
What? What'd you say?
Oh, I was just saying that's what I liked a lot about the Star Fox 60 or the Star Fox 3D.
I personally would have preferred an actual sequel rather than a remake.
Yeah, rather than a remake, but it was still Star Fox, I guess.
Yeah, but I already beat Star Fox 64 for all it's worth.
Yeah.
I don't need to play it again.
Star Fox is
I'd like to play it. I'd like to play it again, but I'd like much more to have a sequel. Come on, it's been way too long.
Good sequel. Let's be clear about that.
Hey. Star Fox Command was a lot better than anyone gives it credit for. The controls were a pain to get used to, but so was Kid Icarus Uprising.
How am I supposed to avoid that?
Magic.
Tell me how how I'm supposed to avoid that. No!
Magic.
There's gotta be a trick to this.
I told you, magic.
Sprint! I ain't having this shit. Sprint. Cut! Shit! Fuck.
Your frustration is ruining the Skype call.
Nope. Oh. Can I do like a dash jump? Fuck it. I'm going to get the fucking bottom thing. Hate life. I would just like pause it, but then, you know, I have to get the bottle anyway. Might as well show it. Show my stupidity.
And you can always do a cross cut. Or a fade cut.
Yeah, I might as well. There, I got a bottle. Here, after I get the net, I will pause it and then pause the recording and then just head to the tower. Yeah, back to the maze. There he is. There. Alright, I am going to just pause the recording. Okay. So, I don't need to go down here. Okay, reasoning for being such a Zelda fan. I prefer the gameplay over anything. It's really like the instant gratification of beating a boss or, you know, going through a dungeon, the different, like, just the exploration part of it. That was weird. Like, just the gameplay's really solid. Like, you know, you have a sword to attack things, pretty simple with that. You gain items as you go along, and hearts to, you know, run it like your health, your max health or whatever. And I don't know, I just feel like you grow with the game, I guess, as it goes on. Even though it gets more difficult, you also, you know, get stronger, I guess. I'm not quite sure. Like, the items they give you can be applied in so many different ways that it's really creative seeing the way they make the dungeons and stuff. And it's also the atmosphere thing.
I could definitely agree with that, except for, you know, the more recent games.
Well, like Skyward Sword and the DS ones?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, some of those weapons are way too specialized.
Yeah, like, it started with Minish Cap, honestly. When am I ever gonna start, like, digging with mole claws?
There were a couple places outside of the world, but one of the most annoying ones was when you went to the Temple of the Gods in Twilight Princess, and you got the control rod, and it basically allowed you to possess statues within the Temple of the Gods, and then it didn't work when you left. Yeah. So then you had to go through this long, tedious quest of you had to bring this book to this guy, and he would read out the book, and it was a chant that would repower the staff. So then you have to go around and find all these owl statues and find the missing characters to that book, so you can complete the book. So you can break the seal on this one owl statue, blocking the way to the next dungeon. And then you never use that. Then you never use the control rod again. It was meant for one dungeon and access to another dungeon. It wasn't made for fights.
Yeah.
except for the boss battle. It was basically made just to, basically made for the, those companion things, like in Wind Waker, whenever you had those, whenever you went into that Temple of the Gods, and you had to call the statues to follow you.
Yeah. Yup. Okay. Yeah, there was like in Spirit Tracks there was an item. All it did was it raised sand. Like it would raise sand so you could walk on it, like get to higher platforms. And like that sounds like it'd be extremely useful if you could raise things other than sand. But like the problem was they never actually had those type of like raisable blocks in the like overworld or anything. It was in like one dungeon and one boss fight specifically tailored for it. Like the Cane of Samaria. Well, another problem is like when they have good items and they barely use them. The Cane of Samaria, do you know what that is?
Nope.
Basically what it does is it creates magical red blocks, I guess. Like you drop a block, like when you use it, it drops like a red block, and it uses a bit of magic. And usually you use it to like hold down switches and stuff. But they only used it a few times in Link to the Past. They used it more in Oracle of Ages and Seasons, but that's because Capcom's really good with puzzles.
Or at least they used to be.
Yeah. The problem was that like it had all these neat physics with it, like if you were to dash jump into it, it would it would fly across the room. Sorry, I'm like can't think straight. It would like it would fly across the room, or like if you dropped one and then used the thing again, it would like explode and kill enemies nearby and flip switches for you.
Nice.
Like it had all these cool uses, but Nintendo never used it. Now in like Oracle of Ages, they used it, like Capcom used it a lot more. Oracle of Ages were really puzzle oriented. They used it a lot more, like you place the Cane of Samaria block on, you know, what seems to be a pit hole to see whether or not you can walk on that part of the ground or not.
Huh.
They just used it a lot better than Nintendo did. But then, like, going back to what you asked earlier with this Zelda, what makes it so good for me is not only does it have the good gameplay, but such good story elements to go along with it. Like, every game,
that's
really love the stories.
That's exactly what I like from it, is that, I'll admit that the stories aren't exactly riveting and original because they're pretty much rehashed endlessly.
Yeah, but they're
it's still the epic of good versus evil that I never get tired of.
Yeah, and like
it's probably my favorite dumb story archetype.
Yeah, and it's like the structure is cliche, but it's like it's still just as gratifying every time. I never get tired of, you know, getting the 3 gems and finally being able to get the Master Sword.
Yeah, the quest of power. The quest for ultimate power so you can defeat the ultimate evil.
Yeah.
It's a dumb story archetype, but it's probably one of the most enjoyable dumb story archetypes. Because it really doesn't get old.
Yeah.
And this is coming from someone that's a huge Gundam fan, so... I'm much more used to the story archetype of where no one is particularly evil, but one side is perceived as evil because they're the losing side.
Yeah.
And that's really what Gundam's all about, for the most part. There were some special cases like the Zeta Gundam when the story was about Earth Federation autonomous organization called the Titans, who were notorious for abusing the rights of space noids, only because of a war that happened like 7 years ago. And also some terrorist attacks, but you know, those didn't exactly end well. Now, like, one of my personal favorites, just because I watched it recently, would have to be Gundam Stardust Memory, because of how that went out. It's like, the story was there was this guy named Anavel Gato who was a really amazing Xeon pilot And if you don't know, Xeon is basically like space Germany.
Okay.
And in the original Gundam, it was basically them in space fighting Earth. And they lost. So they're perceived as evil.
Oh, because
by the whole world. Yeah, they lost. Germany lost both world wars, so they're perceived as villains for that. When in fact they just really have good sausages. I'm not sure how that's so important, but hey, I felt like saying it. Anyways, Ana Delgato was sort of one of the most radical Zeons, so, you know, he loved his country and everything, and he was willing to die for it, and his commanding officer's orders. And at the end of the war, he was more than willing to throw his life away, but his commanding officer said, no, we'll come back for revenge later. I've got a plan and everything, just give me a while. So they come back a few years later, and they catch wind of the Earth Federation developing a Gundam-type mobile suit that's designed to launch nuclear missiles into a combat area and survive the nuclear blast itself. But, you know, it's also made to make sure no one else survives. They steal it, so they can go and conduct their own operation with it, which they've named as Operation Stardust. This is where it gets spoiler-ish, so if there's anyone else watching this, or if you don't care to listen to it, you can stay right now, but I seriously doubt you're as much of a Gundam fan as I am, so I'll go ahead.
I've never seen any Gundam series. I mean, I want to eventually, but I've never seen them. I know my friend really likes them, but I've never watched it.
Oh man, you will like them, I promise. Anyways, this is where things get good. It's like, normally Xeon is perceived as evil, so you're rooting against Ana Delgato, despite the fact that he's actually very passionate about his country, and after a while you start to sympathize with his own motives. And he meets this one woman who's just this really awful person, like probably the best design for an attitude of space pirate I've ever seen, and he already hates her off the bat. And rightfully so. She cut him off. She basically did an illegal flight maneuver in space that would have destroyed his ship. Turns out he's supposed to fight with her against the Earth Federation.
Okay.
So, and he absolutely hates the concept of that, but has to go with it because his commanding officer said so. So, anyways, she basically gets forgotten, and I'll get to the reason why for that.
Like forgotten by him, or the story? Like they just dropped her.
Yeah, the story basically puts her off as a side character. And at first I kind of got pissed by that, but then they actually worked that in so perfectly, I couldn't think of a better way for them to do so. I'll get to that later. Anyways, after multiple shenanigans, the main character, I think his name's Shiro Amada? Yeah. He's fighting for the Earth Federation, and basically it's his life goal to defeat Ana Delgato and save the day. Be the big hero and everything, and that's where this sort of good versus evil comes in. But, like I said, Ana Delgato is not evil, he's passionate.
Yeah.
And he succeeds in Operation Stardust, which, as it turns out, is that the Earth Federation has this naval ceremony, which is kind of a popular thing to do already in today, where basically the entire navy of a nation would meet up somewhere and go through this massive naval inspection by the highest ranking naval officer in the area. This is done once a year and is basically lauded as just a really fancy ceremony for looking at ships. Ana Delgato takes the advantage of this, of basically the vast majority of the Earth Federation Space Navy in this one area, comes in and nukes the whole thing. He destroys about a third of the entire navy in one shot. And that's when things get serious. It's like the Earth Federation finally decides that they should stop treating these Xeon remnants as terrorists and more as an actual threat. But it's too late for that, because then the evil space pirate woman comes by and hijacks 2 space colonies en route to Side 7, which is on the far side of the moon. She takes the 2 space colonies and breaks their mirrors, causing them to go into an erratic orbit where they collide with one another, and one of them gets flung off to the moon. As in, it's going to crash into the largest city on the moon, called Granada. In the last moments, one of the top officials in Granada is found out to have been collaborating with said space pirate woman, and he activates the pressure.
The woman you were talking about earlier that was like set aside, right?
Yeah, her. This is her moment to shine as the ultimate side character. Again, this is not her most important move, but
it's like
it's still probably one of the most worthy to be noted.
Like they're working her into the story again.
Yeah. And this is where I like I like how things get good. Is that she tricks him into using the pressure lasers, which are these laser stations mounted on the moon designed to fire at the back of a ship to launch it out into space without the ship having to use its own propulsion. The mechanics behind this is basically the laser would hit a tank of water and the tank of water would explode, launching steam, and the laser would continue to heat up the steam, causing it to expand and basically push the ship away at obscene rates. So he uses this system to fire into the space colony, and the space colony has its own rig full of this same steam system, and forces the space colony to go into an orbit around the moon and get slingshotted straight into the Earth.
Alright, 1 second. I'm gonna end this here because I just beat the boss and there's no reward. It says no reward.
Right.
Maybe you should go back to the church. And that's the dungeon. So I'm just gonna end this.
Ready for that.
So.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah.